A royal child was publicly humiliated. Her father said nothing, but his silent action reshaped the structure of the monarchy. During what seemed like an innocent gathering, no ceremony, no crowns, no flashing cameras, a quiet moment revealed a deep and dangerous fracture when Princess Charlotte's unguarded sense of dignity was wounded by none other than the granddaughter of Queen Consort Camilla. From the indifferent glances of nearby adults to the palace's unbroken silence, everything seemed to affirm one unspoken truth. Sometimes the smallest of frictions can rattle even the most powerful alliances. There was no public accusation, no official statement, just a single unmistakable decision from a man who knows better than anyone the price of long-held restraint. William did not raise his voice, but he made the entire royal household stop in its tracks. And from that moment on, it wasn't only Charlotte who crossed a threshold of growing up. Camilla's position in the future of the monarchy began to tremble in ways no one had foreseen. But what really happened? How could an incident between two young girls ignite a silent current strong enough to shake the throne itself? And why, after weathering decades of public scrutiny, was Camilla this time unable to keep her balance? The annual Norfolk Horse Fair on a Sunday afternoon was a scene of pastoral beauty, like a painting come to life. Soft golden sunlight spilled across the fields, mingling with the scent of hay leather and the faint aroma of tea sipped from paper cups. The rhythmic thud of hooves blended with the laughter of the crowd and the gleeful shouts of children chasing ponies past wooden fences. This wasn't a formal royal event with crowns and sashes. It was a simple day in the countryside where the royal family mingled with the rustic charm, muddy boots, easy smiles, and a rare sense of closeness. At the heart of this scene stood Princess Charlotte, the only daughter of Prince William and Kate Middleton, her eyes sparkling like a lake catching the afternoon sun. Her hair was neatly tied with a blue ribbon, and she clutched an orange juice carton, her lips curving into a gentle smile as she watched a white horse clear an obstacle. At 10, Charlotte already carried herself with the poise of a grown woman, composed, polite, and steeped in the values her parents had painstakingly instilled: kindness, generosity, and above all, self-respect. For William and Kate, the crown was not a symbol of power, but a reminder of the duty to protect what is right. And Charlotte, though young, had absorbed this truth. Beside her stood Eliza, 17, the granddaughter of Queen Consort Camilla. Eliza had once been a fixture in the monarchy's glittering moments. At 4, she had walked in the procession at William and Kate's wedding, a flower girl whose innocent smile was captured in family photos hung proudly at Clarence's house, where flashbulbs and perfection were always meticulously staged. Over the years, as Charlotte grew, Eliza and the young princess often appeared together in family snapshots, their smiles a symbol of unity between two branches of the royal family. But behind those images, an invisible divide had formed. Whispers in the wings, cold glances from royals, and a subtle rivalry between William's direct line and the Parker Bowles family had strained the bond between Charlotte and Eliza. Eliza, with her sharp eyes and confident demeanor, seemed to carry an unspoken envy, a smoldering fire from childhood, when she realized she would always be a shadow beside Charlotte's radiance. Charlotte, in her innocence, was oblivious to this undercurrent. She turned to Eliza, holding out her juice carton, her voice clear and eager. "Eliza, wanna try some? Mom says it's the best at the fair." Charlotte's smile was radiant, the sincere offer of a 10-year-old, eager to share a small joy with a sisterly figure she once adored. Eliza glanced at the carton, her lips curling, not into a smile but a calculated smirk, her sharp eyes masking a simmering jealousy. She took the carton without a word of thanks. Charlotte beamed, adding, "But don't drink it all." "Okay, I'm saving some for George." Charlotte turned away, captivated by a white horse leaping an obstacle, the crowd's cheers ringing out. When she looked back, the carton was empty. Eliza stood there holding the drain container, her gaze icy, then tossed it onto the soft grass with a flick of her wrist. "Oops, all gone," she said, her tone dripping with mockery, a defiant smirk playing on her lips. "You drank it all," Charlotte stammered, stunned. "Yup," Eliza shrugged. "But I said," Charlotte's voice trembled, her wide eyes searching for an explanation. Eliza cut her off, stepping closer, her voice low but biting. "You're always acting like you're in charge, Charlotte, just like your mom thinking she's already queen." Charlotte tried to speak, her voice rising with hurt. but Camilla's not. My gran was the real queen. Eliza leaned in, her words sharp as a blade. No, my gran is the real queen, and you just a spoiled little girl who'll fade away. Nothing special. Eliza's words, though, quiet, cut like an invisible knife slicing into Charlotte's tender heart. The crowd around them noticed nothing. The laughter, hoofbeats, and chatter continued as if all was well. But for Charlotte, the world shrank to the echo of Eliza's cruelty. She bent down, staring at the crumpled carton on the grass, her hands trembling as they clutched her skirt, grasping at the last shards of her betrayed trust. Without a word, Charlotte turned and ran to her mother, her small feet pounding the earth as if only Kate's embrace could shield her from the invisible storm. That fleeting moment, small but sharp, was more than a personal slight. It was the spark that ignited a deeper rift far beyond the tale of two girls. The discarded carton wasn't just Eliza's disrespect. It was a line crossed, a symbol of the simmering envy between two families, William's direct line carrying Diana's immortal legacy, and the Parker Bowles clan forever striving to carve their place. From this, a silent war was born, not just for Charlotte's dignity, but for a family's honor, a dynasty's legacy, and a vision for the throne's future. Kate Middleton sat on a long wooden bench, her eyes gently scanning the crowd. Her olive green coat hugged her elegant frame, and the paper teacup in her hand still steamed faintly. Kate has always exuded calm and grace, but behind her soft smile was a mother ever watchful, ready to shield her children from any threat. She had just taken a sip of tea, about to turn and chat with a local, when she felt small arms wrapped tightly around her. It was Charlotte. The girl said nothing, didn't cry, but her embrace carried an unusual weight, as if she were clinging to a safe harbor in an unseen storm. Kate felt her daughter's racing heartbeat, the slight tremble in her small hands. She knelt down, pulling Charlotte close, her hand gently stroking the girl's ribbon-tied hair. No questions, no reproach. But Kate's eyes in that moment changed. From their usual warmth, they turned steely, an impenetrable fortress. This was no longer the gaze of a duchess, it was the fierce stare of a mother, ready to face the world for her child. The crowd seemed to sense the shift. Awkward smiles, faded, curious glances darted away. No one dared approach. No one dared speak. A few yards away, Prince William was laughing warmly with King Charles, their voices mingling as they discussed a favorite horse. But mid-sentence, William froze. A father's instinct, honed by placing family above all, sensed a shift in the air. He turned and his eyes met Kate's. One moment, no words. But Kate's gaze told a story of hurt, an unforgivable offense, and a call to action. William didn't hesitate. He excused himself from Charles and strode toward his wife and daughter, his boots crushing the grass, each step a declaration. He knelt before Charlotte. She wasn't crying, but her reddened eyes and tightly clenched hands told the tale. William asked no questions. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle yet firm, as if pouring strength into her to weather the pain. Then he looked up, his gaze sweeping the crowd, landing on Eliza. Eliza stood nearby, chatting carelessly with friends, her smile as if nothing had happened. But when William's eyes met hers, that smile faltered. It wasn't an angry stare, nor a threatening one. It was the look of a father, a future king, and a man who would never forgive those who hurt his family. That wordless gaze was a verdict. William's eyes then turned to the adults around, those who had witnessed the incident, but stayed silent, who saw Charlotte flee but did nothing. His gaze lingered, slow and deliberate, etching a warning into their minds. Indifference was a sin. No words were spoken. William took Charlotte's hand and led her from the fair. Kate walked beside them, her hand resting lightly on her daughter's shoulder, her steps steady, but carrying a silent grief. They left in silence, but that silence was heavier than any proclamation. Behind them, the crowd began to whisper, murmurs rippling like waves. Eliza stood there, still talking, unaware that this moment had altered her fate and her family's forever. But William knew. Kate knew. And deep in Charlotte's young heart, she sensed this was more than a personal wound. It was the start of a greater battle, a fight to protect honor, preserve a legacy, and ensure no one, whatever their title, could harm her family without consequence. A week after the turbulent events at the Norfolk Horse Fair, the Great Hall of Buckingham Palace was steeped in solemnity. Today marked the 25th anniversary of the Royal Charitable Foundation, an event drawing aristocrats, esteemed donors, and global influencers. Guests in elegant attire sat in rows of red velvet chairs, their eyes fixed on a podium adorned with the Windsor crest. Cameras from BBC to CNN focused on the stage lenses, glinting like the curious eyes of the world ready to capture every moment. The public expected a familiar speech from Prince William, warm words about children's education, environmental protection, or the charitable projects he and Kate championed. But today, William delivered something else entirely. He stepped to the podium, his tall frame commanding in a finely tailored navy suit, exuding the aura of a future king. His eyes, sharp yet calm, swept the room as if searing each face into memory. The hall fell silent, not a sound, only faint breaths and the rustle of fabric as the audience held its breath. William placed both hands on the podium, his voice low and resolute, ringing like a bell in the vast space. "My family is my first priority." He began each word carrying the weight of an oath. "Anyone who hurts my daughter and thinks they can still stand near us is mistaken." No names were mentioned, no details were shared, but the room, the nation, and viewers worldwide understood. Those words were not just a statement, they were a line drawn in blood honor and a father's fierce love for his daughter. No one dared breathe loudly. Quick glances darted among guests, subtle nods exchanged, and stifled whispers began to spread. They knew William didn't speak lightly. They knew he never said anything without action to follow. The next morning, a small but seismic piece of news spread like wildfire. Eliza Parker Bowles, granddaughter of Queen Consort Camilla, had been removed from the guest list of the Garden at Windsor event, an annual outdoor gathering for royals and young aristocrats. No official statement from the palace, no document or explanation, just an absence so stark it was a silent full stop. The press erupted. Headlines flooded papers from tabloids to reputable outlets. Prince William draws line with Camilla. Princess Charlotte in the wound from the inner court. A juice carton shakes the monarchy. Pundits debated fiercely on air thousand-word analyses, dissected William's actions. But none dared dig too deep. Behind the Prince of Wales's silence was an unspoken power, a resolve that even the media respected. They sensed this wasn't just a childish slight. It was a turning point, a declaration of power and legacy. What stunned observers wasn't William's words, but the precision and ruthlessness of his actions. Excluding Eliza from the Windsor event was just the beginning. It sent a clear message there was no place for disrespect in William's monarchy. And behind that message was a broader warning that anyone, regardless of blood or title, would pay a price for crossing his family. In a private room at Clarence House, light from an antique desk lamp cast shadows on Camilla's face, deepening the lines etched by time. The Queen Consort, who had weathered scandals, criticism, and public disdain for decades to secure her place, now faced an unprecedented shock. She slammed her hand on the ebony desk, the sharp sound cutting through the stifling air. Newspapers scattered before her, their headlines about William and Charlotte like daggers to her pride. She was a bridesmaid at their wedding. Camilla cried, her voice trembling with rage and pain. Charlotte called her sister. How dare they? How dare William treat my granddaughter like this over a juice carton? She paced the room, her dark green silk dress rustling with each step, as if the fabric itself echoed her fury. Camilla, who had endured Diana's towering shadow and whispers of being the other woman, felt her lifelong efforts crumbling over a childish incident. She refused to accept that Eliza's careless moment could lead to such grave consequences, not just for her granddaughter, but for her own standing in the monarchy. She turned to King Charles, who sat behind his desk in his private study, a newspaper open, but his eyes distant as if not truly reading. Camilla stood before her husband, her voice dropping to a near plea. "Charles, you must do something. William can't just exclude Eliza like this. She's just a child. You're the king, you have the power." But Charles replied softly, his voice weary and detached as if he'd anticipated this. "It's been handled, Camilla." Eliza was wrong. Those words were a final cold blade to Camilla's heart. She stood, frozen eyes wide, unable to believe what she'd heard. Charles, her greatest ally, who had stood by her through years of public scorn, now chose to stand aside. With his health fading and the weight of kingship pressing down, Charles seemed to prioritize peace within the family, a peace that painfully excluded defending Eliza or Camilla. Camilla felt a surge of betrayal, not just from William, not just from Charles, but from the royal institution she'd spent her life trying to join. She had thought she'd overcome Diana's shadow, believing she was an integral part of the Windsors. Now she faced a bitter truth. She was an outsider, a queen consort with a fleeting title, and her descendants, those carrying Parker Bowles' blood, would always be seen as interlopers by the throne's heirs. She sank into an armchair, her trembling hands covering her face. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered to herself, her voice breaking. "I gave them everything, my time, my loyalty, my heart, and for a juice carton they're ready to erase my family." But Camilla was not one to surrender. Though heartbroken, she began to plan. She would not let William and Kate control the narrative. She would use the media, a weapon she'd mastered long ago, to turn the tide. She summoned her trusted aide, ordering a sophisticated PR campaign. Camilla believed the public, ever swayable, would rally to her side. But she didn't know that in this chess game, William was steps ahead. And the public, against her expectations, wasn't easily swayed by excuses. Camilla's anger, though fierce, was a mere flame before a greater storm, a storm named William, who had decided there was no room for disrespect in his monarchy, no matter the offender's title. In the days following William's speech at Buckingham Palace, Britain's atmosphere was a smoldering ember ready to ignite. Newsrooms, from cheap tabloids to prestigious broadsheets, unleashed articles like arrows from the shadows, each headline a bid to shape public opinion. One paper screamed, "Eliza the innocent caught in a prince's wrath," spinning a tale of an 11-year-old punished excessively for a childish act. Another bolder asked Kate Middleton, perfect mother or silent power player, hinting that Kate was pulling William's strings to solidify her influence. A major outlet went further with an analysis titled, "Camilla Pushed Back, a Realignment in Windsor's Inner Court." These words, though printed in ink, carried the weight of whispers in power's corridors, where all eyes watched the Windsors' every move. Camilla, seasoned in media manipulation, knew the power of public sentiment and how it could reshape a story. In her private Clarence House room, she summoned her PR team veterans who had helped her navigate years of public disdain under Diana's shadow. Camilla ordered carefully crafted leaks, stories of Eliza's innocence, how she was merely careless like any child, and how Charlotte perhaps was overly sensitive to a harmless remark. Some articles subtly suggested William, swayed by Kate, was acting rashly, turning a childish spat into an unnecessary family feud. Camilla believed that with media support, she could reclaim the upper hand, casting Eliza as the victim and dimming William's actions. But this time she misjudged her opponent, not William or Kate, but the public itself. A photograph, its source unclear, spread like wildfire on social media. In it, Charlotte, eyes red but tearless, clung to her mother at the horse fair, her small face both resilient and fragile. Kate, with a steely yet loving gaze, wrapped her arms around her daughter like an unbreachable fortress. The image wasn't just a moment, it was a global symbol, not only of a hurt child, but of a child's dignity and a mother's unconditional love. Millions of comments supporting Charlotte flooded X. "No one gets to hurt a child, no matter who they are," one user wrote. William did right protecting his daughter over any title. William and Kate's silence, rather than calming the fire, poured fuel on it, making the story burn hotter. The media began to turn against Camilla. Articles defending Eliza, instead of sparking sympathy, fueled public outrage. Each headline painting Eliza as an innocent victim was met with scathing comments. An 11-year-old knows what they're doing when they deliberately hurt someone. Camilla's trying to cover her granddaughter's actions with cheap excuses. Camilla's efforts to control the narrative crashed like a ship on hidden ice. Every article, every social media comment only clarified one truth: the public wasn't on her side, and they didn't forgive disrespect toward Charlotte. Meanwhile, William and Kate maintained a terrifying silence. No interviews, no official statements, no social media posts. Their silence wasn't weakness, it was a masterful strategy. They let the public's outrage do the work, letting the wave of anger drown Camilla's efforts. Each passing day, the story of Charlotte and Eliza grew beyond a royal scandal. It became a moral tale, a lesson in the consequences of disrespect and the power of family love. In the public's eyes, William wasn't just a prince, he was a father, a protector, and a symbol of integrity. Camilla from her room read the latest headlines with weary eyes. For the first time in years, she realized she'd lost control. The media, her once trusted weapon, had turned against her. And deep in her heart, she began to feel a bitter truth. Though she bore the title of Queen Consort, she would never truly belong to the Windsors, not like William, Kate, and Charlotte did. In a private meeting room at Kensington Palace, sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a long wooden table where senior royal advisors sat, their faces tense. The air was heavy, not just from reports of King Charles's declining health, but from the oppressive silence of Prince William seated at the table's head. His navy suit framed his tall frame, but it was his piercing gaze cutting through all pretense that kept advisors from meeting his eyes. They were discussing the monarchy's future, preparing for an inevitable transition of power. But when one advisor mentioned Queen Consort Camilla's role in long-term plans, William stood abruptly, silencing the room. His voice was low but razor-sharp, each word carved from stone. Camilla may have taken my mother's place on the throne, but she will not take her place in memory. The room fell deathly still. Advisors accustomed to heated backroom debates felt time itself pause. William's words were not just personal, they were a quiet declaration of war, an affirmation of Princess Diana's legacy and his vision for the monarchy's future. No one dared object, no one dared question. They knew when William spoke, he spoke not just for himself, but for a generation, for values he and Kate had sworn to defend at all costs. But William didn't stop at words. From that moment, he launched a silent but ruthless campaign, executed with a strategist's precision. Official royal portraits of the next generation, symbols of the monarchy's continuity, no longer included Camilla. The Parker Bowles lineage, including Eliza, was erased from the Windsors' official genealogy as if they had never existed. Major royal events, from the vibrant Trooping the Color to cozy Christmas services at Sandringham or milestone celebrations, saw no trace of Eliza or Camilla's kin. Most crucially, no public roles were granted to Camilla's descendants, not now, not ever. Each move was made in absolute silence. No public announcements, no official documents, no explanations. But that silence made them terrifying. This wasn't personal vengeance or a public feud. It was a reshaping of the monarchy, a declaration that only those with loyalty, kindness, and honor had a place in the future William was building. Camilla, despite her title, had no part in that future. At Clarence House, Camilla sat alone in a quiet room, light from the antique desk lamp highlighting the lines on her face. On the desk, a small frame lay face down, a photo of Eliza and Charlotte at William and Kate's wedding when the girls held hands and laughed. Camilla lifted it, her trembling fingers tracing the glass. "I thought I'd made it inside," she whispered to her trusted aide, her voice breaking with pain and despair. "But it seems they only needed me as a backdrop. My blood isn't blue enough." She set the frame down, her eyes clouded with rare tears. Camilla, who had faced the world to claim her place, now saw a bitter truth despite her title. Despite the throne, she and her family would always be outsiders to William and perhaps to history itself. Each new article, each report of a royal event excluding her family was another knife to her heart. But she had no strength left to fight. William had drawn a line, and it was an impassable wall. Meanwhile, at Anmer Hall, William and Kate sat in their cozy living room, firelight dancing on the walls, casting flickering shadows. Charlotte sat between them, her eyes bright but carrying a maturity beyond her years. "I'm not mad at Eliza anymore," she said, her voice small but firm. "But I want Granddaughter to always be here in our hearts." William smiled, resting a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and steady. "She's always here," he said, his voice deep with love. "And you, Charlotte, will keep her memory alive forever." In that warm family moment, William knew he wasn't just protecting his daughter. He was safeguarding a legacy, his mother's, one of kindness, and a monarchy he vowed to lead with honor and integrity. One quiet afternoon at Anmer Hall, late sunlight filtered through large windows, warming the polished wooden floor of the family living room. Prince William sat in an armchair facing his three children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, seated on a thick rug, their eyes fixed on their father. The air was different from their usual family chats, filled with laughter or light stories about school and games. Today, William carried a rare solemnity, yet his voice remained warm, wrapping each child in an invisible embrace. "Camilla is no longer your grandmother." He began, each word chosen with care, as if laying stones for an unbreakable wall. She doesn't deserve that title. The children were silent, their eyes never leaving their father. George the eldest nodded slightly, grasping the weight of the words. Louis Younger tilted his head curiously, but sensed the gravity in his father's tone. Charlotte, the 10-year-old in the middle, met William's gaze. Her eyes shone with understanding, no surprise, as if she'd long felt this truth. William paused, his eyes locking onto Charlotte's. "You have only one grandmother, and that's Granddaughter," he continued, his voice softening but unyielding. "She lived for love, for kindness, and for what's right. That's the legacy you'll carry, and that's what we must protect." Charlotte said nothing. She nodded, her lips pressed together, her eyes blazing with a youthful but fierce resolve. At 10, she had learned that family wasn't just blood. It was values upheld and defended, memories cherished, and lines drawn to protect honor. She asked no questions, needed no further explanation. She understood her father, and she knew this moment was a turning point, not just for their family, but for the monarchy itself. From that moment, Camilla and her descendants were erased from the Windsor's symbolic structure. No official proclamation was made, no public document issued, but the change was clear as day. In official records, speeches, and family photos displayed in palaces, Camilla and the Parker Bowles line ceased to exist. They became faint shadows cast out from the royal narrative, as if they had never been part of it. Everyone knew William had drawn an uncrossable line. This wasn't an act of anger or revenge. It was the act of a father shielding his children, a son preserving his mother's legacy, and a future king securing his monarchy's future. In William's eyes, Camilla could keep her title of queen consort, but she would never have a place in his family's heart or the memory of the throne's heirs. Kate, beside William in the days that followed, looked at her husband with deep understanding. In a private moment as the sunset bathed Anmer Hall's gardens in gold, William took her hand and said, "I'm not doing this out of anger, Kate. I'm doing this for our children, for my mother, and for what we believe in." Kate nodded, squeezing his hand. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm proud of you." Charlotte in the days after grew quieter, but not from sadness. She carried a newfound confidence, an understanding that dignity, however small, could reshape a dynasty. She often sat alone in her room, flipping through books about her Granddaughter, reading stories of her compassion and courage. One day, Charlotte whispered to herself, "I'll make Gran proud." And William, watching his daughter from afar, knew he had done right. He hadn't just protected Charlotte from past pain, he had given her a future, where Diana's memory would forever guide them, and where kindness and honor would shape the monarchy she would one day help lead. Eliza Parker Bowles now lives with her parents, stripped of all royal spotlight. She is no longer invited to Windsor events, from the vibrant Trooping the Color to intimate Sandringham gatherings. Her name has vanished from articles, family photos, and official records. When asked about Charlotte, now a beloved public figure, Eliza replies curtly, her voice flat but tinged with melancholy, "We were once close, but some mistakes, even small ones, can't be undone. No shared photos, no invitations, no titles tied to the monarchy. The girl who was a flower girl at William and Kate's dazzling 2011 wedding, smiling innocently in family portraits, is now a shadow erased from the Windsor's official memory. Camilla, though still queen consort, no longer appears in family photos or major events. In the history of William's reign, she and her descendants are a blank space, unmentioned, unrecorded. The crown can be passed on, William once told Kate in a private moment, but memory is only for those who earn it. And for Charlotte, growing up not just with a future crown, but with the lesson that dignity, however small, can change a dynasty, her journey is just beginning. Will the public continue to back William's iron resolve? Or will they wonder if a teenager's impulsive moment warranted reshaping a monarchy? What do you think of this story?